Okay. So basically, we used array as a substitute of when we have number of variables. When we want to program with a number of integers, or let's suppose when we have to program with number of floating points. So instead of naming and creating a user-defined name for every integer, or let's suppose for every floating point number, what we do is we create a derived data type. So arrays were a derived data type that was that used the basic data types as used in C++. C++ में हमारे पास integer था, float था, long था, double था. So these were the basic fundamental data types. So as a substitute, or we can say arrays are the derived data types that are derived from these fundamental data types, right? So the basic concept was in order to process, let's suppose variable, there are 9 variables. So instead of processing all these 9 variables individually, what we do is we create a single element, a single naming user defined variable, and then we use the concept of subscript, or what we call in array as the indexes of the array. So in case we want to iterate, or in case we want to read 10 numbers, so what we do is we create a single variable. Let's suppose the name of the variable is marks, and then we used to iterate each and every next element using the index of the array. So index was a simple subscript, I can say. So a simple subscript which iterates to the next element, and then we can either work it individually, we can access the arrays directly, or we can take the input from the user using a for loop. So for loop में क्या करते थे, we just create a simple for loop, and then we used to take the input in a single line instead of creating. See, if you can see this diagram, if this is the diagram that emerges the need of the array. So in this case, if we have 9 scores, right, so these are 9 variables. So in order to process these 9 variables, what in basic programming, what we do is we write scene score 0, scene score 1, scene score 2, 3, and so on till 9. So this was the basic fundamental programming when we don't have the array. So we need to process these 10 scores, and then on the right side, if you can see the diagram, we have to print these 10 scores. So for every individual element, we have to write either scene. So what we converted this concept is we did convert the subscript and we formed the index. So if you can see score 0, so score 0 refers to the index or the variable 0. Score 1 refers to the second variable, and the name of these variable is same. That means score is now an array, and these indexes refer to different variables, or different you can say variables that are defined by the same name. So if you can see this diagram, so on the left side you have scores, score 0, 1, 2, 3 till 9, and we have used the subscript format, and on the right side you can see scores 0, 1, 2, 3 till 9. So these are the index format for these particular subscripts. Okay, so next we move to how we can iterate through this same array. So a simple for loop लगाते हैं. We include a simple for loop. You can also work with while loop or do while loop. What we do is we initialize the index, and so I here is the index. So I is 0. I should be less than 10. So this depends on the size of the array. So if you are iterating through scores में हमारे पास variable थे 0 to 9. So therefore the index or the testing element is having the limit less than 10. अगर वो आपका 11 तक जाता, so I would have written it to be less than or equal to 11. So that depends on the number of elements or the maximum elements that you have in the array. So you have to read the scores. Read is simple, scene लगाना है आपको. You have to process these scores. So these are 10 scores that have to be processed. I mean whatever computation that you are performing. And in case of printing or using the cout statement, तो उसमें आपको यही करना है. You have to write the cout statement, but again using this loop. So you have to again include the for loop. You have to include you have to start the for loop, you have to apply the testing condition with the index, and then you have to increment the index. So this was how we process the arrays, right? Next is simple. This is how these different elements are storing the, the values, and the name of the element is same. So it's score, but the index refers to different score values that are being stored. Okay, so declaration was same. We have to define the array using any of these three techniques. You have to include integer scores and followed by the maximum limit for that variable, that array variable. If you have to work with character, you have to include, or you have to write the data type character, then you have to write the name of the user defined array, and then maximum limit for the array. So by default, it will start with the index 0 and it will end till size -1. So these are the three techniques for declaring and defining the array. Next is Okay, next is the initialization condition, or how you give the values to the array. So in case of giving the values, what you do is you write the integer as a data type, you mention the array name, and then with equal to sign, you mention all the values. So let's suppose there are 5 values and the limit is you have to define 5 values. So what you do is separated by comma, you define each and every value for these indexes. And what you can do is, if you don't have to mention the size over here on the left side, if you can see the first example, numbers is having the size 5, right? So in case you want to avoid, you can write a single blank bracket. So these are square brackets, and then you have to give the values. So by default, what the compiler do is it will count the values and initialize the size by default. In the third case, where numbers are given 5 but the values are less than what is given, so in this third example, what is given is all the leftover values will be initialized to 0. And in the fourth case, the name of the variables followed by the size, and it is equal to 0. That means each and every value will be assigned and filled by 0. Okay, so next is this is how you initialize the value. Or if you, the simple example, if you want to score or you want to initialize the complete array with double the size of the index, so what you do is you use the for loop over here, and you start the loop with I equal to 0, I less than 9. So it's the same case of score, and what you do is you just give the scores of I, that is the index, equal to I multiplied by 2. Okay, so this is again a simple example. Okay, so in this example, what we did is जिस केस में हमें एरेज के इंडेक्सेस पे और उसके वैल्यूज पे, किसी पर्टिकुलर इंडेक्स पे वी वांट टू एक्सचेंज द वैल्यूज, सो द मेथड फॉर एक्सचेंजिंग द वैल्यू इज with the temporary variable. So what we do is we create a temporary variable, and then we use the temporary variable to exchange the values. Let's suppose over here at num3 and num1, we want to exchange the value of 3 and 1. So 3 पे 24 save था, 1 पे 7 save था. What we have to do is we have to store the third index into temp, then we have to exchange the values, and then we have to ultimately, in the last figure, you can see the values are exchanged. So temporary variable holds the exchanging value, and that temporary variable can help you with exchanging two variables, the values of these two variables. You cannot do with simply the two variables. You have to include the temporary or the third variable.